Happy beautiful day, it's Pete Cohen here. Welcome to episode 177 of the My365 podcast series, How to Conquer the Imposter Syndrome. Get ready for another game-changing My365 podcast. Happy beautiful day, podcasters. Are you a podcaster? Who invented podcasts? I really don't know. Who invented the imposter syndrome? Now, this is a really important subject and something I really want to share with everybody. There are some amazing people out there that talk about topics that I believe we should all be talking about, and this is one of those topics. There's a guy called Brendon Burchard who's pretty well known in the personal development field, has done some amazing work. And I caught a live broadcast that he was doing talking about this. And I thought, well, I've heard of imposter syndrome, but what exactly is the imposter syndrome? Where did it come from? I'm one of these people that's a bit obsessed with where do words come from? Where do conditions come from that we would then give it a label? So my goal in this podcast today is to definitely give you a different perspective and perhaps help you understand that imposter syndrome, maybe you know what it is and you've felt it before and it's perfectly normal. Maybe you don't know what it is, but you're going to find out that you actually have it. Because I believe that everyone in the world has struggled with imposter syndrome at least multiple, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of times in their life. Let's first of all look at what that word imposter means. It means to deceive, to swindle, to cheat. And I don't know whether, when I think about it, I hear those words, maybe I've heard in a film, stop, imposter! And that person was a cheat or someone who wanted to swindle someone or take advantage of someone. And I think that's what we've been doing to ourselves for many years. We kind of cheat ourselves, we deceive ourselves. But the first time that the word imposter syndrome kind of came into the public fore was about 1978. It was a term that actually women started to talk about, especially women in business. And if you've ever doubted yourself, if you've ever doubted your achievements and accomplishments, if you feel fear that you're going to be exposed, if you feel, not physically exposed, but that may be a part of it, that you feel that you're going to be found out in some way. And imposter syndrome was, like I just said, was known and was talked about in the circles of high achieving women who felt that they were perhaps some sort of fraud and they were going to be found out in some way. But if we were going to label imposter syndrome by people that doubt themselves, doubt their achievements, doubt that they're good enough, in fear about perhaps being caught out in some way, shape or form, then I think that pretty much all of us have felt like that. At least, as I said, multiple times in our life. Why is that? Well, if you think about it, we really kind of do live in a world that is giving some messages, some subliminal messages that, we're not actually quite good enough the way that we are, and we have to strive to often be something that we're not. We have to, when we're young, look to fit into groups. We have to fit into systems that we didn't create. So it's no surprise that people feel this way. And I think that it would be really, really great if we could have a bigger debate about this and encourage people to talk more about how they feel. I definitely struggled with imposter syndrome, and for a major part of my life, I really felt like I wasn't good enough and have doubted myself. And with all of the things that I've achieved, I've looked to achieve those things in many cases because I didn't want people to find out maybe how I really felt. And there's a part of me that can't believe that I'm actually saying this and I'm being so honest, with all of you. Because I do believe that honesty is the best policy. And I've learned, as many of us do, that feeling that way is cheating only one person. It's cheating ourselves. And I think that if we can look at ourselves in the mirror and say, you know what, I do feel like that from time to time, because it is good to talk. It is good to acknowledge how we think and feel. So I suppose it's really fundamental to ask yourself a couple of questions about how do you feel, apart from with your hands, how do you feel most of the time? How do you feel about yourself? Now, I wouldn't look at this as right or wrong, to label it in that way, just to maybe be curious, is this nourishing to me? Is this the way I want to move through the world? If we have moved through the world in a certain way, where we think about ourselves in a certain way, that has become a response, a conditioned response. But if it's been conditioned, of course, we can recondition ourselves. And people often say to me, Pete, who's the best person that you've worked with, the greatest success story? And I think they often want me to talk about, some of the famous athletes, famous people that I've worked with. And of course, that's been awesome. I think perhaps the greatest achievement has been to work with everyday people just like you and me that have this imposter syndrome, that feel that they're not quite good enough, and to give them a different perspective and for them to understand, oh, okay, I understand why I think that way, because you know what, I grew up into a world where I had to fit in and I had to be like everybody else. I had to almost stop thinking about what was right for me. I had to think about what was the right thing to do to fit in and be a part of a group, because human beings are social creatures. We don't live very well on our own. We need to fit in, we need to adapt. And I don't know how many of you listening to this podcast have ever felt rejection, because that's something none of us want to feel, yet we've all felt it in our life, and rejection hurts. And some of the theories around why it actually physically hurts is because when we were living like animals or as animals, living off the land, if you felt that rejection in some way, that was a feeling, it was a big alarm call. You wanted to feel pain, because if you were actually going to be rejected, you'd be out on your own. So there is something innate in human beings that we try and conform, we try and fit in. And if you think that if you try and fit into something that you didn't create, it's not yours, then it probably would feel uncomfortable. And so many of us have felt uncomfortable for way too long. And if you're one of those people and you wonder why things keep happening to you in the way that they do, well, let me give you another perspective about this. Have you ever heard of the law of attraction? Now, I've always thought, what does that actually mean? I've never really got my head around what that means, and everyone seems to think it's either a load of nonsense or they've got their own opinion about it. The way I look at it is this. We have thoughts. It's estimated that we have a lot of thoughts, thousands of thoughts every single day. And once you become more aware, which again is part of the real necessary steps to change your life and to become much more than an imposter, to become who you really want to be, who you were perhaps even put on this earth to be, to grow, to shine, to make a difference. But thoughts, every thought, I believe it vibrates. Every thought radiates a signal, and every thought attracts a matching signal back to it. Let me say that again. I believe the law of attraction is this. Every thought vibrates, every thought radiates a signal, and every thought attracts a matching signal back. So what does that mean? Well, if you're thinking negatively in a certain way, a lot of the time you're sending out a signal, and that signal almost attracts something that then comes back to you. So if you feel that you're not quite good enough, you're then looking for evidence that that actually is the case, that that actually is true. What you think is really the whole premise of your life. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you are right. But what would happen if you really chose to change? And the reason this has come to the fore is that I work with so many people And many of those people are a part of our coaching group, people who I work with every day, every week, and helping them go from where they are to where they want to be. Often people can get better at working out where they want to go, but that in itself is a massive step because most people don't know where they want to go. They know where they don't want to go, and then they wonder why they end up going back there. You get what you focus on in life, but then even when people start to focus on themselves being fitter or healthier or happier, they don't identify with that. They identify with the fact that they are someone who is not good enough. And good enough for what? So the shift comes for most of us is that when we wake up and realize, what are we saying to ourselves? How do we feel about ourselves? There is a reason why public speaking supposedly is the number one fear in the world. Why do you think that might be? Well, some people would say it's that the person who's up in front of people doesn't want to reveal themselves, doesn't want to show that they are weak. Every single human being has weaknesses. No human being is perfect. We all have idiosyncrasies, we all have imperfections, whether it's big feet or big noses or bald heads. I'm obviously talking about myself there. But also insecurities. Am I good enough? Do I fit in? But when we can start to see this with a fresh pair of eyes, I believe it gives us power. When we can realize that there's a battle going on inside all of us, there always has been, or not always has been, it probably started from the age of 3 and it might carry on for the rest of your life, but you win that battle. When you start to realize that you are more than what you think about yourself, you can change the way you think about yourself. But ultimately, the buck stops with you. In fact, my next podcast is all going to be about artificial intelligence versus ancient intelligence. You see, artificial intelligence is really saying that, look, don't do anything. Everything can be brought to you. Everything will be automated. It's estimated by the year 2033, there'll be no cashiers. There'll be no bus drivers. Everything will be automated. So we don't actually have to do anything. But human beings don't flourish when we don't do anything. Human beings do things. We are human beings. We have to do to be. That's how I look at it. I might be wrong here, but you know what? I hope this is a massive wake-up call for people that are listening to this. You're suffering because of your identity. If you change your identity, not completely change it, because I'm really asking you to be who you really are. It's not like you have to be someone that you're not, but realize a lot of the time you're doing yourself a disservice. You have been given the ability to create an identity, and the word identity really means a continual being. When you decide how you want to move through the world, and no one can improve this for you. It's something people can help you. Coaching can help you. But ultimately, it's down to you. You can do it, and it will be the greatest achievement when you rise up above some of the nonsense that you've been telling yourself for so long. You put a big smile on your face and you realize, I can be whoever I want to be. I can do more, I can achieve more. I don't have to doubt myself. I will always have that part of me in me, but I've also got another part of me that wants me to rise up, the part of you that's listening to this podcast. And I really encourage you to take a few moments. In fact, this is something I've been doing with a few people recently that we've been working with, is get a piece of paper and write down in the middle of it, what do I want? What do I want? And stare at that piece of paper with a little bit of contemplation. What do you really want? Is it to be happy, to be peaceful, to feel free? What is it that you want? And you know what? It's good to talk. Hopefully, you have some people around you that you can talk about this. You can ask people, have you ever felt like this? Have a conversation. Because we are really the sum of the people that we spend most of our time with. And often people's lives massively change when they find a group of people, or even a person, that they can talk about how they think and they feel. And especially true for women, or maybe just women are just much better at talking about how they feel, whereas men, we're much more guarded. But we can change, and we need to change. Not now, but right now. Look, I genuinely appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast. And this is a debate I think we should all be having. My goal is to inspire people to be better than their best, but it's very hard to be inspired where you look at yourself and you say, I feel like an imposter. You don't have to feel like that. I would encourage you to go and have a look at our free case study training. See what we're doing with people just like you. Just visit mi365elite.me/case-study. That's mi365elite.me/case-study. Go and check it out. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, or if you're listening on iTunes, please leave us a comment, share it. If you're watching this or listening to this on our website, again, thank you very much. Leave a comment and feel to share it. Let's get this debate going. We are more in the sum than what we think. You don't need to be an imposter. You can be anything that you want to be in your life. Happy, beautiful day. Thanks for listening. Much love.